Hi there, I'm Clark Huggins, creator of Reckless Deck. Welcome back. On this episode, we're going to address what I think is probably the most common bit of email that I get from people who have found out about Reckless Deck and are starting to use it. They either bought something from us online, or they found one on Amazon or out in a retail store somewhere, and they email me and they say, how can I get the most out of this deck? Do you have any tips or tricks or advice about how I can use this deck to the best of my ability? And the answer is absolutely, I totally do. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I think that this is going to be episode 1 in possibly a 3-part series, because I think we have a lot of ground to cover when it comes to this. But this is episode 1 of a series on how to get the most out of your Reckless Deck. Okay, so let's look at the first way that I recommend that you could use Reckless Deck. What you do is you take your Reckless Deck, you open it, and you shuffle it. And then you draw yourself 3 or 4 cards, and you make something out of it. It really is that simple. We call that one the straight shuffle, and it's not rocket science. Really, all you do is shuffle your cards and pull yourself out 3 or 4, or however many cards you feel like you want to work with. Look at the combination you have, and try to make something happen with it. Okay, here's one caveat. When you just shuffle your Reckless Deck, there is a chance that you might get more than one blue Intrinsic Nature card. Now, that's fine, but I think that these blue guys are pretty powerful. And what they do is they direct you to an all-over design kind of concept. They're very fundamental to the idea that you're developing. And so having 2 of them at the same time can feel somewhat like you're being sent in 2 directions at once. And if that happens, well, if that happens and you like it, then no problem, go for it. But if you do get 2 of these in one draw and you feel like, that's confusing my concept, it's muddying the waters, don't be afraid to just put one back. Okay, the second method I want to talk to you about is called the sampler. And that's when you take your deck and you separate the 5 or the 6 categories, if you're using volume 2, out into their own separate piles. And then you draw 1 card from each of the categories, and you work with 1 card from each category for your design. This is the way I like to demo Reckless Deck when I'm doing shows, because it really shows somebody who's new to Reckless Deck each of the 5 categories and gives them a little taste of each one, and then you can see how they can combine with each other. Which brings us back to talking about Intrinsic Nature. Now, these blue guys are going to direct you to make some kind of a creature or some kind of a non-human character. If you want that, then awesome. But if you know you might want to be working on a human or a humanoid or human-ish character, and you don't want to add in bolder creature choices, then don't be afraid to just set this category to the side for this one. Here's one that's really easy. It's called the cherry picker. And that's when you randomly select your first 2 or 3 cards in your combination, and then you turn your deck over and you go fishing for the last one. What you're looking for here is the last card in the combination that really makes your brain light up and makes you say, oh, that's the one I really, really want to use. That, to me, seals this combination together and really speaks to me in some way. Okay, so the next method I want to talk to you about is called the creature feature. And this is where I feel like Intrinsic Nature really gets a chance to shine, because this is definitely a creature-making technique. So what you do is you focus on the 2 categories that are really most focused on your character's physicality, and those are Intrinsic Nature and the modifications category. You let those 2 do most of the heavy lifting, and then maybe you add in a costume piece or a accessory at the very end, just to add a little bit of narrative or a little bit of direction to what this creature character is all about. One thing I really like to do is take a single Intrinsic Nature card and add 2 or 3 modifications cards to it. This gives you kind of your all-over design, and the modifications give you specifics on the body here and there. Now, this technique is definitely a time where maybe you do want to take 2 Intrinsic Natures at one time. They're, like I said, pretty powerful, but if you put them together with each other without a lot of other stuff in the way, this is a great way to make yourself a creature, is to take 2 very, very powerful choices and put them together and see what you get. Okay, so we've got our deck separated into categories, right? Now, this one doesn't really have its own name. I would consider this maybe a little bit of like a subheading of the sampler technique. And that means that instead of taking 1 from each category, you lean into one specific category, and that's really going to inform the kind of character that you're creating. Like, for example, if you lean into the costumes category and grab yourself 2 or 3 or 4 costumes cards, you're going to get a character with a very specific and very elaborate look. lean into the weapons category, and you're going to get yourself a soldier or an assassin or a fighter of some kind, somebody who's really loaded up on weapons. Do this with accessories, and then you've got somebody with a lot of stuff, somebody who's really prop heavy. And that to me makes me think of like a wizard or a scientist or an inventor or an explorer, somebody who's got a lot of gear. Grab yourself multiple modifications cards and you're gonna get some real serious changes to their physicality. They could end up being really hideous or really beautiful, depending on how you use the cards. So the last technique I want to talk to you about is called the World Builder. And really, you can use any of the techniques that we've already talked about in terms of how to select your cards. But what's different about this one is instead of making a character, you make a group of characters, all of whom are related in some kind of way. So what you're doing is establishing an aesthetic that gets carried across several different characters at once. And that could be a king and a queen and their knight and the court jester, or it could be a superhero and their sidekick and their evil nemesis. This is really exciting. When you use the deck this way, you may find that you've backed yourself into world building. You've basically created a world in which this style of stuff that lives all together, it occupies not just one person, but covers kind of everybody. Like you've created a style of being or a way of being in the world. There's episode 1 of how to get the most out of your Reckless deck. If you like these videos, please hit like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to us. Also, whatever you make, consider posting it on social with #RecklessDeck. We would love to see it. Thanks again for coming back, and we'll see you next time.